Let's move to this whole notion here of what's happening inside the Republican field and the fact that opposition research is now being conducted on Michelle Bachmann. There is a little game. I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you haven't noticed it, don't doubt me. Part of my job is to notice things before you do and then tell you. That's called the cutting edge. I'm on it. I own it. There's a little game being played by the established Republican commentariat, what I call the inside the Beltway conservative intelligentsia, or the Republican intellectual elite. And it is aimed at muddling conservatism and discrediting, taking down, if you will, conservative Tea Party candidates in the Republican presidential primary process. And it is the way to do it, by the way, is a page right out of the Democrat left's playbook. Now, last week, I mentioned and discussed at some length the argument that some were making that if conservatives demand candidates who are too pure, they can't win. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's effervescing out there, and it always does. We can't win, with a conservative that's too pure, that's too rock-ribbed, it's too rigid. We need a conservative who understands that raising taxes now and then is a reasonable and sometimes intelligent thing to do. We don't want the kind of purity that says never raise taxes. We don't want the kind of purity that gives us the social issues. We need Republicans who aren't as pure, who will realize that sometimes you just have to stop talking about guns and abortion for the larger good of public policy. Well, today in the Daily Caller, that's Chatsworth Osborne Jr.'s website, right? Tucker Carlson. There's a guy named Matt Lewis, and it's a takedown of Michelle Bachmann in the Daily Caller. In this case, it's not because she's too pure. In her case, it's because she is too impure. In other words, let's not support candidates who are unabashedly conservative because they can't win. That's the advice. Michelle can't win because she's too unabashedly conservative. Palin can't win because she's too unabashedly conservative. On the other hand, there are no unabashedly conservative candidates in the field. When you get right down to it, this is what happens when you try to analyze politics and write about it, when you don't really understand conservatism and the Tea Party movement, and instead you get swept up in the Washington way and the mentality of gotcha. See, this whole notion of purity, the assault on purity, is just another way of attacking mainstream conservatives. But conservatism, I would say, speaking for myself, conservatism is not about purity. It's about a philosophy. People get sidetracked, purity and all these other aspects, but conservatism is a philosophy, and all conservatives do not agree on all things when it comes to every issue or policy. However, there are fundamental and defining principles and views on life that do define and unite conservatives. Now, let's look at Bachmann. Just a quick peek here at Michelle Bachmann. She is a favored target of establishment Washington. Now, that doesn't come as a surprise to you, does it? I mean, you know that she's a target. You've seen it. It might perplex you as to why. At this stage of the game, look, I know we're in the Republican primaries, and the battle is between ourselves now. It's understandable. But establishment Washington, Bachmann is a favorite target, and even to the point of talking about how she's too short. or she's radical or what have you. But in this case, in the Daily Caller piece, the attack on her is that she supported earmarks and ethanol. So the argument here, this is the reverse purity argument. The argument here is that she's not pure and therefore not pure enough for Tea Party activists. This is an attempt to alert the Tea Party that Michelle Bachmann's a fraud, that she's really not one of you. She's out there trying to create support, command support from all you Tea Party people, but she's not one of you. She's not pure. She's voted for earmarks and ethanol. Okay, well, what else? Michelle Bachmann has been a leading advocate for stripping $105 billion from Obamacare so that it cannot be implemented. Michelle Bachmann was one of the early conservative leaders, along with Steve King from Iowa, trying to make sure that Obamacare was defunded. She heard the Tea Party. She heard everybody was taking it very seriously. We must not allow this thing to become law, or we must repeal it or defund it. Okay, here's $105 billion put in there stealth way by Pelosi. She identified it. She wanted to strip it out of there. She's a leading opponent of the continuing resolution theory of funding government. She steadfastly stood up and opposed the House leadership on funding the government 2 weeks at a time. She's a leading opponent of amnesty for illegal immigrants. She's a solid conservative on national security and defense. She's a leading activist for the Tea Party, and she's a major speaker at numerous Tea Party events. Now, all of that distinguishes her quite a lot from most of the candidates who are seeking the Republican nomination for president or planning to. However, because she supported some earmarks and ethanol, she is said now by non-conservatives not to be pure enough for conservatives who are demanding purity. And in another piece, they'll say demanding purity is a bad thing. But right now, she's not pure enough. Nobody can be everything to everybody. On the big stuff, Michelle Bachmann has flying colors when it comes to being defined as a conservative. It's a stretch. It would be an incredible stretch to try to say that she's not a conservative. I think we've talked about earmarks, ethanol, those two things are considering everything else we face, that's chump change. But if you want to focus on those two things, trying to say she's impure, that's what's doing now. That's what's underway. People on our side. I got to take a break here, my friends. The time just gets away from me. We'll be back and continue right after this. Don't go away.